How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, I had 4 questions sent my way, 4 common scenarios that if you work in corrections, you may likely have to deal with. I'm going to have Russ Hamilton. We're going to answer the 4 questions, and hopefully this will help you, not even in just real-time appliance, but also, if you got to take a correctional interview, because these may be questions that they may ask to check to see if you understand what you need to do when these circumstances arise. But real quick, guys, just want to go over our sponsors. First sponsor is American Military University. If you guys get a chance, looking to get a degree, seek higher education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, also very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. And we also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. Guys, if you get a chance, please check out this book. This book is being used for training all across the country. The link to that is in the description. And also, guys, my most recent book, the second book, which you see the cover there, My Journey from Officer to Admin, that got picked up by this company here, Blue 360 Media. It should be out in the market soon. We're wrapping up some final republishing. I'm loving it. I'm loving how it's going to start to look. I'm really excited. This is more of what I wanted the book to be. So again, thank you, Blue 360 Media, for picking up the book. The book is not out yet, but if you want, in the description is a link to their website, and you could check out the other books that they offer. All right, let me get Russ Hamilton on. What up, Russ?
Anthony, how are you doing, sir?
Good, brother. You mind introducing yourself and maybe letting us know how Keepers of Chaos on Facebook is doing?
Yeah, I got a few different things going on. Okay, so first of all, my name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired correctional sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Started my career back at San Quentin way back in the 80s. Eventually transferred and promoted to another institution in Northern California. And then I retired. I came back and did another stint as a correctional officer, retired annuitant, and then retired again, and then came back for my local county, and I did a stint as a senior juvenile correctional officer. And I now work for a private company where I'm the case manager at a local county jail where we do reentry and rehabilitation work, also for the local probation department as well. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. Keepers of Chaos on Facebook is where I hang out. It's my own thing where we have people that are interested in the profession, as it were, but not just interested, where they want to learn about everything correctional to make themselves better corrections professionals. It's open to every corrections professional, not just those of us who are sworn or carry a badge, but just any that work inside the walls. So I hope you guys come and check that out. Also, if anyone is interested, I'm getting ready to do an event up in Sonoma, California, where I'm going to be doing a Tough Mudder. If anybody is also training for a Tough Mudder up there, or you want to come and check it out on August 19th, I'd love to hang out for a little bit, then go get muddy and bloody and electrocuted and all that good stuff that comes along with doing a Tough Mudder.
All right. And maybe one day I'll get to see out there. California is a bit far from me. I'm on the other side of the coast. So I got 4 questions. And basically what I'll do is, because you're the guest, I'll ask you the question, and then we'll get your answer. And then if there's anything to add in, I will add in. But I want to give you, as the guest, respect first.
And just so people know, 0 prep.
Yeah, that's always the case.
That's the way we always do it.
That's always the case. So this is great. So I just got the questions sent my way. They were emailed to me. So someone wanted my thoughts on them. I asked them if it's okay if I did a show on it, because, it's hard to email thoughts. I mean, you're just going to wind up very short with it when I feel that some of these questions could be a bit, a bit of a discussion. Now, granted, real quick, if you're new, you're not expected to know all these things. So just know that we're answering this question now with 20-something odd years experience from my end and over 30 experiences on Russ's side. So again, we have an unfair advantage because when we were asked these questions, I'm sure the first time we were entering the career, we wouldn't have these type of answers. But it's good to revisit these type of questions 20, 30 years later to see how we would answer them.
Well,
All right,
let me tell you something, Anthony. When you're working in corrections, the only kind of advantage you want to have is an unfair one.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, so here we go. Here's the first question, Russ, and then I'll have you go first for each one of the 4 questions. What would you do if you are conducting security rounds, you look into a cell and see an inmate being raped?
Okay, so this is one of those things. The first thing we always want to do is we want to sound the alarm, and we want to make sure that somebody knows where we are, where the occurrence is, and what's going on. Beyond that, this is a point at which we don't know for sure what exactly is going on. Could it be a rape? Yeah. Could it also be a setup to escape? Sure. So you have to wait on whatever your policy and procedure says with regards to opening that door, but you also have to be proactive. You have to start giving commands. I would go ahead and, open that food port. If you have food ports in there, I would disperse chemicals and then wait for the appropriate amount of backup to get there. Once backup and everything gets there, then we can make entry. Then we can do what we have to do to make sure that, we handcuff the perpetrator. Probably also going to think about handcuffing who the apparent victim is, though, because we don't know. We haven't sorted it out yet. We want to make sure there's no weapons there involved. We want to be able to separate these individuals. We want to make sure that we cordon that particular cell off, because this is a crime scene. We're going to have to go in there and actually start processing evidence, and we're going to make sure that we also activate. Usually in a bigger facility, you have a nurse or set of nurses that's assigned to actually start doing the part about processing the rape kit and things like that. And then, beyond that, we're going to have to start, filling out our reports. But the main thing in that point there is we have to make sure we separate those individuals. We have to make sure that we also, protect that evidence. And then we're going to start wanting to get statements. We're probably going to have to Mirandize the perpetrator. And so you have to be real careful with that. If you're not trained in what Miranda entails, it's a little bit different inside of a custodial setting. It's actually a little bit more permissive. And then beyond that, that's what I've got.
I know that was great. So I just want to rehash, but I want to add some stuff. So I love the fact that you don't know if it's a setup. You could have 2 lovers. Let's be honest. You could have 2 lovers. And when you have 2 lovers, they could be extremely dangerous. Hold on, guys. Hey, can you turn on the light? Someone just randomly. Hold on. I'm going to have to yell. Hold on. I shut the door. Yeah, I'm going to keep that too. All right. Wait, they did. Hold on. All right, sorry about that, guys. Got kids running amok. All right, so let's start this again. I love what Russ said. Obviously, it could be a setup. Got to get the backup there. I love the fact that you said open up the food port, spray, because that's an immediate action while we're waiting for the backup, because you do not want to go in there alone, obviously. That's why I feel if it does take backup, to open up those cell doors, the officer doesn't need those cell doors on them. That can come with the response team. So it eliminates the compulsion to jump in and do something and wind up getting hurt in the process. Again, while you're waiting, I love the fact that you're spraying the individuals, because that should be enough of a deterrence. And again, as mentioned, it could be 2 lovers. And I've seen officers get seriously attacked and even killed for trying to separate lovers. Don't forget, we also have a PREA issue here now. So we have to determine what happened. I love what Russ said. Secure the crime scene, but let's also put those 2 inmates in dry cells, because there's evidence. We're not going to be so quick to put these inmates in an area where they can shower and stuff, because right now there's evidence on them that showed that, yes, we have a potential rape that could have occurred. So you want to put both those inmates in a dry cell. Russ mentioned a SANE nurse. Not all facilities have those types of nurses. So you may have to send that inmate that you believe was being raped out, which usually comes from the authority of the prosecutor's office. to see if it's something that they would like to start gathering evidence on, and they'll work with the investigative division. Another thing that Russ said that's extremely important is the reading of the Miranda rights, because again, you don't want to violate the rights of the person who's who is going to be the person that the complaint is going to go against. So again, if you have, if you're doing escorts, make sure you separate both parties, but do not. I mean, you could talk to the person who may have been raped, but you cannot talk to the person who is the one that's probably being accused. And on another note, sometimes they like to spontaneously admit, put everything in your reports. Everything they tell you, without you prompting it, make sure that you put down that I did not prompt for this information, prompt for this information. But with that said, this is what he said or she said during the escort from part A to part B. And then I think, as I said, make sure the PREA protocol is ran, supervisors are notified, your investigative division is notified. But again, as the immediate officer, what Russ said was a great response. I kind of brought it up to another level, but I love the idea, Russ, of opening up that food port, and while you're waiting for that response, spray in there. Great immediate action. Anything else you want to add, Russ? We can go to the next one.
No, just, make sure, you guys, while you're out there, that every chance you get that, you're bugging your supervisors for training. There's a lot of different things that, this kind of thing can go sour on. And the more training you have, the more that you understand, what's in play, especially with regards to PREA and crime scene preservation and those type of things. The better you're going to perform when, it actually comes to that point where you actually come across this and have to do something. So this is one of those things, we always talk about the what if game, but this is the what if game on another level, because, we're thinking this thing all the way through to the end. Yeah. Because once again, we don't know with certitude exactly that this is a rape going on. So we have to provide for staff safety. We have to provide for public safety. We have to provide for the safety of the inmate that may be getting raped in there. So just make sure, that you bug your supervisors for this training, because it's going to be important. You should be automatically able to do what Anthony and I have done here, which is, articulate what needs to be done in a situation like this. This should be second nature.
Yeah, and again, you can't stress the importance of that. I can't stress enough the importance of that crime scene. That's automatically when you have taken the inmates out, make sure you do prepare everything for the crime scene, including what they are wearing. That's going to go in an evidence bag. And also, please, because you're going to have continuity evidence forms, try to limit how many hands touch that before it gets to the investigative division. Let's just try to get it from the person collecting the evidence to the investigative division box. Let's not, try to pass it off to so many people. Whoever collects it should be the one that distributes it over to the investigative division. And we've seen that happen. We've seen a lot of people who are just possibly not as motivated or a little bit lazy to bring it from point A to point B. So they'll collect the evidence, but then they pass it up to someone else to pass it forward. No. Whoever collects the evidence, you should be bringing it over. If you're a supervisor and that's a unit officer that collected the evidence, get them relieved and have them bring it over. Too many hands messes things up. I don't care if it's documented that it went through 6 hands. It doesn't matter. Try to get it from, the original person who collected it to the investigative division. All right. Next question. All right, Russ, you are conducting count and you see an inmate hanging.
Okay. This, believe it or not, is actually kind of very similar to what we just did. Although I will say this is, inmates can try and hang themselves in different areas and at different times. I have seen them attempt this in a dorm. I've seen them attempt this in buildings where they're not actually inside the cell. So once again, having gone into a cell where an inmate had pretended he was hanging and it turned out bad for me. I will tell you that, the number one thing we want to do again is we want to sound the alarm and we want to get help on the way there. Once we get enough people there that it's, safe to enter, whether it's a cell or whether it's a dorm, whatever the situation is, the first thing that we want to do is we want to try and get pressure up off of that inmate's neck. And we want to do that in a way that, we can do it, as a team. Hey, I'm going to lift and someone else is going to cut. A lot of places require you to carry a cut down tool with you, or sometimes they'll have them in dispersed areas, around the institution in a lockbox or something like that that you can access. And you want to get in there, and then you want to be able to cut that noose off of them. You want to try and leave wherever the knot is alone. The reason that you want to leave the knot alone is there's a lot of there's evidence with regards to that knot. Do we know if this inmate actually hung himself, or did someone put him there? And that knot is, part of the puzzle that the investigators are going to have to put back together. So once we make that cut, we want to get him down in the easiest way possible in order not to incur further injury. And then we want to get medical there. But if medical is not yet there, we want to be able to decide whether or not we're going to start, life-saving processes like CPR. You're going to want to get your AED there just in case, his heart is already given out. And then once all of that's occurred, and we get him, boarded up off there and out of there, we want to start doing the evidence part of the scene where he was at, taking pictures, showing whatever he threw that around, whether it was a pipe or a doorstop or something like that. And then from there, it kind of gets shuffled off a lot from that point onto the investigators, because there may be people that, might have to, interview some of the people that knew him. But wherever he keeps his stuff, wherever he's assigned, if it's the cell that he's already in, we want to collect up all of his paperwork and things like that, because there could be a suicide note in there. And so then beyond that, that's kind of the range of everything that we do. There may be a few little, tit for tats here and there, but you just want to make sure that you are able to process that scene, keep the evidence safe, save that inmate if possible. And then, tracking backwards, if you're doing the actual investigation on it, interviewing people that were close to him, talking to people that he placed phone calls to, and that kind of thing. This could be a murder. I mean, inmates have been known to cover it up that way. So don't take it for granted that you are seeing a suicide or suicide attempt. It could be something else.
Yeah, and guys, again, as Russ said, it's very similar to what we just dealt with. I mean, the point is the preservation of the crime scene, yes, but also make sure you are have enough backup before you respond. That's what I'm saying. I mean, if it requires someone else to be there to open the cell, the response team should be the one bringing the key, because it's very hard to watch someone doing this to themselves and to not want to jump in. But guys, there's been a lot of times where you have inmates that are setting it up, and then the moment you open up the door, it's their way out. Also, you can also, believe it or not, and I don't know if Russ mentioned this, you can also open up the food port and spray on this as well. Did you mention that?
I didn't, because
you could.
I mean, your point's well taken, but someone, if you're trying to stop them in the actual act, you might make things better, but you might also make things worse. I don't want to put too many ideas into people's heads, especially if you don't have, a level of experience as to what you might expect doing something like this. So I kind of want to take a little bit more base approach. Would I do something like that? I would roll the dice if I thought I could save a life. But not everyone has as much experience as some of the people on the line, and they may hesitate. And if they're hesitating, or if they're not sure, there's a bigger chance that they could make the situation worse.
Right. So obviously you could spray during the attempt. Obviously, if they're already hanging, or if they cut themselves and they're laying out, obviously it's foolish to spray them. I mean, now it's the outcome. The process has occurred. But if you see the person going through the process, or superficially, let's say they're cutting themselves or putting, I've seen people try to drown themselves in the sink, obviously shut the water off. But I'm saying during the process, if you could use that to deter them, you can. A lot of people think that you can't. You can, because that will hopefully stop or maybe buy time. But again, like Russ said, it's during the attempt, not if you already have the person hanging already, because now you got to get in there.
Yeah, and if you're if you're stopping a cutter, they obviously, they have some tool in their hand. It may not be a shank, but even if it's a razor blade, we can't take them into custody until we get that out of their hand. So getting them to drop it, or at least getting them into a position where they can't see what you're doing by spraying them, into their face and eyes. Maybe being able to bring an impact weapon in there, some foam, 40 mic or something like that. They have to have that object out of their hand before we want to go in there, unless we have a shield or something like that. But I would prefer to use all kinds of force on them and get that out of their hand before making any kind of entry if possible.
Yeah, guys, I agree. And remember, guys, this is another thing where all evidence has to be collected, what they're wearing, the tools that they utilized, all that stuff is evidence. The cell is evidence. Now, mind you, guys, you are able to bring the individual out of the cell to work on them, and that will eventually become the whole crime scene. So basically, it's the cell, but also where you've worked on the individual, because they have to look at two things. They have to look at, what could have caused the individual to decide to do this, and also our response. So everything and where that body is does become a crime scene. So make sure it's all secured. There's the other thing I want to mention too. Throwing the white sheet over the individual in respect to, let's say that you do have a passing, throwing the white sheet over. You got to be careful with that, because a lot of investigative divisions will say that destroys evidence. Now, granted, it may not be declared a crime scene until after that's all been done. But having said that, just be very wary of putting a white sheet over the body if the person has passed. So I would see what your policy says about that, because sometimes the investigative division may have an issue with that. I mean, I'm used to the practice because obviously it could take a while for the body to be taken out. So you don't want it exposed to the elements or have the officers look at it all day, or just out of respect to the deceased. But make sure there's a policy in play before just throwing a white sheet on the person that has died. You familiar with that, Russ, with the white sheet being a problem?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. You could interfere with, the fiber collection, assuming that, there was a possibility that you had a murder. One of the other things though too is just maybe you can hold something up to keep inmates from viewing the body, because there's a possibility that an inmate was there and saw part of the injury occur if it was a murder, and they might be able to detail and tell you what that injury was. But if they see the body afterwards and they notice the injury there, they can also make up any story that they want. They can tell them that you put it there. So there are reasons why we would not want them to view that body. It's just kind of, get training and learn about the reasons that we do things. We don't want them to see the body. We also don't want to deposit fibers on there that we don't need to, because that could be part of the evidence.
Yeah, someone mentioned a while ago also, with all these unique drugs out there right now, the cleaner the body, the better it is for them to determine what it is, because a lot of these drugs are now synthetic and made, by the person, by people inside the prison. You have no idea what chemicals they're using now. It's insane. I mean, it truly is insane now how much we've evolved. All right, let's see this one. You're in the yard and you suddenly see an inmate collapse from heat exhaustion. Yeah, Russ.
Okay. So, curiously enough, this is another one that I've, actually seen happen. This is one thing though, that again, we got a hot sun out there. We got inmate maybe playing basketball, something like that, and he keels over. Do we know for sure that it's heat exhaustion? No. First of all, you're not a medical professional. Second of all, there are a lot of things out there that can cause that, one of which is fentanyl. So when that happens, usually the thing I would do about this point is to put the whole yard down. I'm going to stop all movement, just so, I have a way of making sure that I have clear ingress and egress for my medical crew that's coming out there. I'm going to get over to the inmate, make sure that, the medical crew can get in there. start giving him some attention. If he's coming around, or if it really does appear to, that he's, suffering from some kind of heat stress, to start, cooling him down. I really, really want to emphasize, though, I want to leave most of the treatment and stuff to the actual medical staff. But cooling him down with some, cool rags or something like that isn't going to hurt anything. I'd be a little bit wary of, trying to give him any fluids at that point. But still, it just kind of depends on what you feel comfortable with. So once again, that's an issue where, we have to have good training. But the main thing I would say is, stopping and ceasing all the movement on that yard, so we know for sure what we have. Because you don't know, someone could have stuck him with a real small wire-like, piece or something. He could be bleeding out inside. We never know for sure what's going on. And the instant that we assume that we know, then we're involved in complacency. So be really careful on these things that seem patently obvious from one point of view, and put yourself in my shoes, who's seen all kinds of crazy stuff like this happen. I've seen guys I thought they were keeling over from this, and they did end up having puncture wounds in all kinds of places on their body.
Yeah, guys, I've seen a couple of things here. Sometimes when there's a medical in the yard, the inmates kind of understand that you got to get in there. So what they'll do is they will drag the body over to you, and then kind of you take the body. I've seen it. You take the body.
Well, especially on security yards that are smaller, and these guys are used to being with each other all day. But like on some of the massive big yards,
yeah, that's different.
Well, that's different, because I've seen medical have to run like a third of a mile across the yard to get to a guy, because some of these facilities are big. A lot of people are used to working in very small facilities. But when you have like one single unit on your whole facility, and that single unit has 1,100 inmates, that's a lot of space. That's a lot of area to cover.
Yeah. Obviously, one of the things we do, because I would actually consider this similar to an active mess hall, where you have a medical emergency. I mean, you have to clear the mess hall or the yard before you can actively go in there as well. That's what we've done. You're not going to bring medical into a yard full of inmates. Your main focus first is to secure the scene before you can tend to any needs of the inmates. So like Russ said, you got to make sure it's safe for medical to get in there. And then again, obviously, I mean, that's what the public doesn't really get sometimes, is they may see a delay in response, but what they don't realize is that we're securing the scene, because at the end of the day, if the scene's not secure, there's no way we're 100% working with the person who may need quick medical attention. So granted, and I love what Russ said, you can only assume at that point what it is. You don't know what it is. But again, as we said before, sometimes the inmates, when it's a medical concern, they know our rules and policies. They know that we can't just jump in there. So they may want to make the effort to bring the person closer so they could step back. We can open up the door, bring the person in, and then we could work on the person right there. Now, granted, if the person does die, we got a problem, because now we have two crime scenes, technically. We got two crime scenes, because you have it where the person originally fell out, and then you have it where they worked on the individual, and then everything in between. So that could become very, very complicated. But I think the main part of this story is, again, sort of with the other three, is you don't rush in there. You don't rush in there. You wait for backup. You wait for the scene to be secured, and then you can focus on the individual. Now, granted, if it's just a medical concern, no problem. We fix the guy, get him going. But if the guy dies, that's going to be, again, back to the crime scene, from where it happened, where he fell out, to where they're at now, and all the way through. So again, it's not always black and white. But in this case here, I guess there's the assumption is heat exhaustion. Russ said, how do you know that? I guess in the question it says it, but you're right. You never know. And I would love, if you ever ask that in an interview, you could say, well, how do you know it's heat exhaustion? Well, you know what? While we're trying to figure it out, here's what we're going to do. And obviously, there's always going to, in every scenario we mentioned, there's always going to be communication between us, our supervisors, and whoever's overseeing the shift. Let's not forget that. All right. This is the last one. you're in that chow hall seating. An inmate skips his seat, and you ask them to go back and fill in the seat. He looks at you up and down and says, "You're just a rookie." No, and you ask for their ID, and it's supposed to be on the person refuses to give you the ID.
Okay, so let me tell you about a little bit of my experience with doing controlled seating in chow halls, especially the first 2 or 3 years I was at San Quentin. My morning duty involved the first thing I would do is we would be feeding what they call the Cat J's. Now they call them triple CMS. Basically, these were the crazy guys. And we had controlled seating because we had a very limited number of seats. And then the next thing I would do is I would be feeding the extended term inmates. That means everybody who has a sentence of 25 to life or whatever. And then from that, we just would jump, straight to the reception center inmates and then to the Gen Pop inmates. And so it was kind of like this horrid little grim fandango dance that you would have to do, trying to decide, what exactly you're going to, tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. So generally, and I had probably, dozens, if not hundreds of incidents like this. The first thing is that you can only push so many issues inside a chow hall. Sometimes it's safer to push the issues than it is at others, depending on, how much flow is in there. And then there's other times that you just have to, go, okay, well, I can't get this guy's ID right now, but later on, I can go over to his unit and I can pick through the photo files and pick him out and then pull him out of his cell, see if his head's a little bit more clear or whatever, and deal with the disciplinary actions from there. But pushing it inside the chow hall is an extremely bad idea because we have the potential for hundreds, perhaps even thousands of inmates in that chow hall at that time. So you really have to, know what you're doing. A lot of times I would radio to the guy at the back and say, hey, see if that inmate will give you his ID, because they're passing out the lunches and they have a real reason to check. And he can look at that guy's ID and then we know right away. The bigger thing is try and get them to comply verbally. This is a position where the guy looks like he wants to square up or whatever. We do need to back off from that. We may need to put that chow hall down. We might need to get, more people in there. I would prefer not to do that, though. I would prefer I used to just have patter. I'd say, hey, come on, guys, man, 4 to a table, but only 1 to a chair. Get them to laugh, lighten up a little bit, tell the guy, try and deflect a little bit. Hey, come on, guy, don't make my job harder. This is bad enough. But at the same time, you got to be careful because you don't want guys pressing the issue on you all the time if you appear weak.
Yeah,
so
and I think
I'm just going to say, so there's a lot to unpack in that. I've done that controlled seating, and Anthony and I have talked about this a lot, about how we would like to see places get away from that centralized seating, feed people inside the units if possible, because that's a dangerous place. And I'll tell you, I've been in fights that were horrible inside that chow hall and had things go really wrong just where I'm, backing up, trying to get outside the door. Sometimes, we back in that day, we had we didn't have spray back then, but we had the side handle batons, and we'd be backing up and having to, strike guys as we were trying to move back out of the chow hall. And so there's a time and place to press issues, and there's a time where you just can't do anything about it. And I know we all want that instant gratification, but if you bide your time and you think things through, eventually you're going to get that inmate and you're going to be able to, write him up. And you know what? Maybe one little write-up doesn't matter, but eventually the weight of those write-ups can carry some weight. Now, to some guys, you're never going to touch them. But I think that what you really want to do is you really want to gain a high level of experience in doing this. I would say I probably seated, hundreds of thousands of inmates over the years, probably even more than that. It may cap 1 million, because it used to be, I would seat, 5, 6, 7, 800 guys at a time in a chow hall. And that was every single day. So getting good at doing it, getting good at, deflecting when they're coming at you or they're being oppositionally defiant is good. Sometimes they were just going to go ahead and do what they were going to do, maybe swing on you or something like that. The good thing when I started is we still had in our chow halls, we had lethal overhead. So that kind of thing happening was a little bit rare because they didn't want to risk that bullet. But anyway, that's the best thing that I can tell you is it takes a lot of experience to be able to, get in and get out of those situations. But when you're doing it every day, you get really good at it.
Yeah, now in my state, we don't stand active mess halls or centralized feeding. We do have it, but we don't stand directly in them. We have a camera system. We have 2 teams on standby, and we have multiple cameras that could pretty much see everything that's happening in those mess halls, or at least at the time when we were doing centralized feeding. COVID changed a lot of that. But with that said, if I could just share into this person's experience, I like what Russ said. It's a strategy here. Do you really want to sit and have a back and forth with this individual, knowing that you're in an active mess hall? It's not a win-loss here. Sometimes you got to pick and choose when to have that battle. With that said, I do have another idea that I would do is obviously there's a reason why that individual may want to sit next to somebody or whatever it is. Started maybe a planned routine. I don't know. I would probably see who that person is, see who the people that they're trying to sit next to. And when they get out, I would have them pulled aside and maybe do some searches, maybe even do a strip if needed. Just because you never know. I mean, again, you never know what was so adamant about this person wanting to sit specifically in that seat. Am I going too far? I don't know. I want to inconvenience them a little bit for the slight disrespect, but I don't think it's a punitive reaction. It's not that I'm doing it because I'm mad and you made me look bad in the mess hall. It's like, well, you know what? You're really adamant about sitting next to that individual. And a lot of things do pass in centralized areas like chapel, mess, rec. So I don't see it to be a bad idea if I see who they are as they're coming out. Hey, yo, do me a favor, COs, do me a favor. Grab those 3 guys right there, pull them over there, and we're going to do some searches and if possible, if needed, a strip. Now, with that said, that's also a good time that when it's done to even address the person one-on-one and say, hey, listen, let's tell you how this really works. And then go ahead and, lay on the expectations of what's expected when they go into that mess hall. But I will tell you this, though. I would be very wary of addressing it in the moment. I would take my time, like Russ said, and then I will go ahead and address it afterwards, because I have seen supervisors get really pissed off if shit goes out of hand. And when they ask you, how did this start? How did this riot break out? Or how did you lose control? Well, the inmate didn't have his ID. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? So again, you got to be very strategic in how you do those approaches. And I think that's why that question's asked. I think that question is asked because they expect most people to say, I'm going to get that ID and I'm going to demand my respect or whatever it is. But this is about strategy here. This is not about win-loss. I had an incident a while ago about cigarettes, and inmates were smoking in an open dorm, and you can't smoke, obviously, in our facilities. And the problem was that I didn't even had backup at the time. So it's just like, you know what? I see them smoking, but I'm just not going to tour just yet because there's nothing I can do. Because if I go there and I go to take that cigarette and, I get into a hard time with this inmate or the other 12 that are all smoking, I don't even have backup right now. That's like another thing too. Another thing. Sometimes we get, and Russ could maybe talk about this just briefly, kind of going off topic, but just as an added thought. Don't get so myopic when it comes to chasing contraband. That's the only thing that you see. Because at the end of the day, if I'm going for that cell phone, that's all I see. And let's say I happen to be in an active dorm and I'm going for that cell phone, that's not going to be an easy grab. And you could be putting your life at risk and the life of your partners. I mean, at the end of the day, be strategic when you're chasing after that contraband, because I've seen people run after it in an open dorm. And it's like, dude, are you kidding right now? We got to be strategic. Whatever they've done has already happened. So now we got to grab that contraband. But I know sometimes people are like, well, you got to grab it before they dispose of it. Yes, but also in the safest way possible. If you're by yourself working a dorm, and there's no backup there, and you see somebody on the phone, you may want to call a supervisor, get a team if there's one there, and say, hey, listen, this guy's got something, and be discreet. And then you get it within a few extra minutes after you've noticed it. But what's your thought? Have you seen people, Russ, that are so myopic that they charge in and
Yeah, it's easy to get that tunnel vision. I was always a hard charger too, but sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. There's times too where it's time to decide, hey, is the risk worth it? And maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. And that's really where good experience comes in. When you're talking about once again, just getting back to the chow hall thing again. We had an officer in one of our chow halls. The guy just he didn't want to sit down or something, and it seemed a little bit off. And that officer, he just backed up to the door and sounded his alarm. We used to carry the old-fashioned whistles, and he was on that whistle, and we flooded that area, and there was probably 15 or 20 inmates that dropped their little tomahawks. I don't know if you guys know what a tomahawk is, but little, disposable razor blade where they bend the ears back. Why were all those guys armed there in that moment? And it turned out that, there was going to be a hit on a guy. And so you got to be careful because, you think the problem is between you and this individual and them not wanting to see, and you want to talk about, myopia. You're viewing that from a completely different thing. And what's really happening is they're getting ready to set up a guy to get sliced in the throat, and you don't know that. So there's a lot to consider, but it is a risk business, and sometimes we do have to take that risk. Other times, discretion once again is the better part of valor, and you just need the maximum amount of experience that you can glean to know when to and when not to.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, I think, pretty much with everything we've discussed. There may be the impulse to initially react. So you got to take a step back and really calculate that response. I mean, again, and we as an agency also have to do what we can to eliminate the consequences of a bad impulsive decision. That's why I really do love the fact that if it takes two people to open a cell door on a response team, let's give the key to the responding officer. I like that idea. But again, I think it's more of, as we navigate through these I think here's the funny thing. Urgency, I get it. It puts pressure on the situation and kind of blinds you, and you want to go right in. We can't allow that to happen. We can't be so blinded by the need to react that we don't take a second to step back. And guys, this happens also if, God forbid, we see one of our own attacked. That could be an issue too. Let's say, again, this is just a side note, not to go too deep in it, but we touched on this before. Let's say I'm eye in the sky, or outside the cage where there's an officer walking a dorm and he gets attacked right in front of my cage. Sometimes the inmates will do it that close because they expect you to open up the gate and run in, which most of us will say, well, I'm gonna go protect my partner. Yeah, but the problem is that now you just opened up the gate, and now you have two areas that have a concern, plus another hostage brought in, and then now you just jeopardized the initial response team's chance to get right in and deal with the threat. So be very careful of the need to act impulsively. Try to step back, think it through, and always look for that response team. I think that was the key. Look for the response team and look for ulterior motives. Sometimes what you see in front of you may not be what you see in front of you.
As a matter of fact, what you see in front of you is almost never what it really is, in my experience. Just hearkening back to one thing here, I had a guy one time. He was the last one to leave the yard, and he was just sitting on the table, and I said, "Hey, come on, let's go." And he just kept staring at me, and then he got a little bit oppositional, and he's like, "No, I'm going to stay right here." And that was the key for me. Hey, no, backing off, checking out what's going on. waited for, someone to come out there and help me. And, by the time we handcuffed him and then started, checking out what was really going on, he had 6 puncture wounds in his back,
Wow.
So you don't know what's going on.
Hey, Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing? It was a good topic. Good questions.
Yeah. It was, I thought there was a lot of fun to this, because I didn't know what the questions are going to be. And, trying to see if I can think on my feet after all this time of not being active. It's a lot of fun. And, I get to think back to a lot of the things that I did, and thinking about, those chow halls, man. Right now, my palms are sweating because, that was every day, and that was real. And, there were times where, you talk about, well, we don't want to press the issue. No, the issue's pressed for you. And boy, I'll tell you what, there's a pucker factor there, because I had it happen so many times, and sometimes it was just day after day, and you just never knew.
Yeah, I think like if me and you were to run a prison together, it'd be the perfect partnership, because you would be able to translate the mindset of the officer going through it, and then I would be in the background making sure all the liabilities taken care of. Because
Absolutely.
I would be presenting your argument in court, and then because I do it sometimes, and sometimes I like even though they're quick to throw out objections if they feel that the question is off key, sometimes I want to attack that question because it's such a stupid question that I want to attack the credibility behind the question. But man, if me and Russ were to run a prisoner jail, I mean, let's try it out. How about me and Russ run a prison with 1 inmate? Just give us 1 inmate. We don't care. We'll just try it out as a pilot program. You know what I mean? But either way, guys, this show is a great topic. I'm going to get it out as quick as I can. As always, guys, thanks for listening. And if you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.